Uh, so yeah, the topic of my talk is an introduction to Varvara and UXN. It's a bit of a niche topic, but it's one near and dear to my heart. So a little bit about myself. I studied computer engineering. I lived in the States for a while doing medical informatics, and when I moved to Canada, I began my game dev career. Worked in robotics briefly, and now I'm helping to run Manitoba's very first worker cooperative game development studio called Something We Love. Uh, you should expect to hear announcements from us in a matter of months. You can also find me on Twitter. I got my name on there, but I'll probably also post it somewhere in the chats. But yeah, I feel like I should clarify right off the bat that this Varvara UXN stuff is something I just do for fun. There's probably a profitable way to go about making stuff there, but it's mostly a fun thing for me. So, time to get into it. It's a virtual platform, like it says on the text, and I'll apologize in advance for the amount of text on here, but hopefully it'll serve as a bit of a reference as well. I won't just read everything. It's a virtual platform that's made mostly for portability and low system requirements. So it's kind of a perfect platform if you want software that'll run absolutely anywhere. Yeah, and like I say, if you want it to be runnable on 30-year-old computers and on smartphones, this is a good way to do it. So I mentioned it's a thing I do for fun. I'll explain a little bit about how I got into it. First and foremost, I don't like having to buy hardware all the time. I'm the kind of person who keeps basically every piece of electronics I've ever bought. So I guess the e-waste thing is not exactly my my problem, but it's more of an e-hoarding thing now. And also, like, buying new tech involves like rare earth mining and stuff. It's a big mess when it comes to what all this high tech stuff can do to the world. So UXN is kind of like a way to, make the most out of any old thing you got lying around. And it's also designed to be so easy to port that I think it's the best shot if there's going to be some cobbled together computer in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. The Varvara software is probably going to run on it. Also, my very first stack-based language. I've played around with esoteric programming languages before, but this is the most serious attempt I've made at learning a stack-based language. So to get into some technical details, UXN is the stack-based virtual machine. It's, as you can see on the screen, it's got 64 kilobytes of addressable memory, which is not a lot, but you can accomplish quite a bit even with small amounts. You can think about all the interesting stuff that was done on the first generation of personal computers and all the great games that were made on Nintendo Entertainment Systems and stuff. You can get a lot of utility out of a machine, even if it's not using a ton of resources. And then built on that virtual machine, the Varvara platform defines all the devices and their requirements. So it's got a 4-color screen, audio, console in and out, and controller support. You'll see some demonstrations of this a bit later. The people who make this, it was first created by Devine Lulin Vega of the 100 Rabbits crew. They live on a sailboat, and part of their design philosophy around this was something that they could use and be useful while they're out at sea for software development and art production. So like they'd been using Electron apps and stuff like that, but since everything's running on batteries on their boat, minimal hardware requirements was important and minimal power consumption. But yeah, there's a whole community. It's an open source project who's been working on this. Uh, yeah, there's a lot of things you can do with it. Uh, the Yeah, you can make compilers, virtual pets, music software, sprite editors, text editors. I'll be demonstrating all these things later. I won't just read everything. A little bit about the portability of this platform. The original UXN interpreter is like 100 lines of C code. So it's been very easy to get it onto other platforms. And I'll be talking about that a bit later too. So, time to see some applications. Some of you may have heard of Donsol. It's short for Dungeon Solitaire, I believe. It's a card game, but it's got video game implementations. The 100 Rabbits folks made an NES version of this and a UXN version. I might be playing a little bit of that live too, if there's time permitting. They made a virtual pet. It's basically a Tamagotchi. Controller support, so pretty fun. I don't have I'm not the kind of person to keep an application running for as long as this would require, but I know that they had the virtual pet running for at least a few days on their boat. Orca is a really cool one. This thing functions as a generator of MIDI signals, so you can connect this to a bunch of music hardware, and it's its own environment for creating sequences and all sorts of crazy stuff with music. There's a bunch of YouTube videos of music that was produced this way. It's pretty fun to watch, and it makes for an interesting live coding performance. Left is the UXN text editor. So when Devine on the boat is programming things, this is what Devine is using. So the ecosystem built here has its own art production and text editing, and it has its own compiler. So there's a compiler ROM that you can use to compile things. So if you've got a system that has it has the interpreter and the set of ROMs, then you have everything you need to make more ROMs. Pretty fantastic. And that's the workflow that they use on that boat. So for Windows, there's a UXN32 application. Runs on every version of Windows, which is pretty impressive, I think. You can also use it on Wine on Linux, but you have a mainline version that you can use on Linux instead. This one is recommended for Windows, though, if you've got if you want to use the fancy debugger that comes with it. The mainline one doesn't have the fancy debugger yet. But yeah, the mainline one has very few requirements. You just need a C compiler and SDL2 library. And yeah, I've built it on an ePC, like an old one with an Intel Atom processor, so it is easy to build. And this one has the most readable source code. The Windows version, because it has to do a bunch of Windows stuff, is not as easy to read. So if you're interested in seeing how all this stuff works under the hood, this is the one to check out. It's also on Nintendo DS. There's you can get NDS files for it, but it's made to be built with a homebrew set of development tools. But yeah, this is kind of a nice platform for it because the Varvara device requirements call for a pointer device and keyboard, and the touchscreen can function as a keyboard. And of course, you've got the stylus, so you can use a pointer. And combined with the controller support, it's pretty nice. But you can also get Varvara running on things that don't fully support the feature set, like the Playdate. I mentioned before it's a 4-color screen, so the Playdate only has a 2-color screen. So there's some mapping involved with getting things displayed. So it won't look quite as nice, but it's got it. It runs pretty fantastic. I thought I'd also mention the sharp memory display thing that the Playdate uses. I've seen an implementation for a microcontroller as well that uses that, and it mapped the 2 other colors to like blinking patterns and stuff. It's pretty wild. I'm not sure if that's ideal, but they were using some fancy Raspberry Pi Pico peripheral I/O features to get that working at a reasonable speed. There are lots of resources for getting started with this stuff. If you are interested in highly portable code or code that you can run on extremely old hardware, or just kind of a nice minimalist environment, I highly recommend you check out the UXN tutorials. There's also this link at the bottom, which is it's basically just a collection of links to cool stuff. You can find links to all the platform downloads and stuff like that. So if you want to get this running on your Nintendo DS, you can find the link to the DS version through here. You can also play around with it in a browser. So there's no need to dig up a 30-year-old computer, or, I mean, it runs on any computer, so you don't need to dig up anything. But if you want to do it right where you're sitting, you can try it in a browser with this link. Yeah, I can open it up to some questions. Dan, is there, what's the way to take questions? Just gonna jump back a few slides too, because I'm worried I didn't explain the platform and stuff quite as well. Because like you can compare it to Pico 8, for example. So like Pico 8, it's a virtual platform, but where Pico 8 has restrictions and it sort of does it for aesthetic reasons, UXN and Varvara are doing it explicitly for the portability reasons. I can bring up. Oh, where do I?
Oh, my question is for stack-based programming. I think WebAssembly is stack-based too. How do you do that? Can you never allocate anything? Can you like not make a hash map? How do you do
Yeah,
it?
so it basically doesn't have anything but bytes and shorts for data types, and you don't uh, have an automatic memory allocator. You can write a memory allocator though. But yeah, there are a lot of virtual machines that use stack-based languages, but a lot of them are not really meant to be programmed that way directly. This one's designed to be considerably more human readable and human usable. So it's it's not too bad to work in. It's definitely an interesting exercise if you're used to high-level languages to get into stack-based programming. But basically, yeah, if you need to deal with some data, you can put it at various addresses in that 64 kilobytes of memory that you got, but you don't you don't have anything special helping you out. You got to deal with the memory management yourself, even more so than just remembering to free things. You have to figure out where it goes as well. And then yeah, for stack-based programming, there's also some standard techniques for like passing parameters to methods and stuff. You basically just in your method signature, which, I mean, it's not enforced by any type safety or anything, but you usually will write a comment to yourself about what needs to be on the stack before this procedure is entered, and then what is going to be on the stack when the procedure is done. And that's kind of a nice way to just organize things and make sure you don't have stack runaway. So yeah, instead of having like memory leaks, or you might have a stack leak, which will end up with a stack overflow, but instead of invalid memory access, is a stack overflow in UXN causes it to just halt.
What is there a simplest example that you would recommend learning from?
Definitely the tutorial. I might just bring up I'll bring up the awesome UXN link from the very end, so that is it still sharing this? Do people see a GitHub page? Okay, excellent. Yeah, so the Compudenza's UXN tutorial is my absolute favorite. It was the person who wrote this is named Seho, and they were writing all this as it was being invented last year. So it became a lot of the de facto standard for the documentation for this system. But it basically walks you through writing Pong and using all the tools that come in the ecosystem to do that. So that's using sprite editors and learning how writing to the screen works. And yeah, it's just goes through how everything works. So yeah, UXN is the programming language is called UXN TAL, UXN TAL, and it's postfix. So you basically stick stuff on the stack and then you tell it what operation to do. It was a lot of fun to learn. I even started making a spreadsheet. It was pretty ambitious. I'm not very far. But even though it's only got bytes and shorts, I did 32 and 64-bit arithmetic. I got that part done. Yeah, like here's a hello world example where you push the H character onto the stack, and then you tell it to use the console device to spit it out. So HELLO, and then a new line, easy. Yeah, I should say it's not. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as an introductory language for people who haven't programmed before, but it's not impossible. It's just might be a bit harder. It also helps if you are familiar with stacks to begin with, but I mean the tutorials will walk you through that as well. It's all beautiful. The community behind this is fantastic. I'll go back and also show the let's see, I know they got the web-based one that I was talking about. So like this is a piano application, so all the code for this is here on the left. You can kind of see, I don't know how readable it is on the stream, but you can write little labels and helper names for things, so you don't have to use hex all over the place. But I think the sound might be coming through, if you can hear. That's the Varvara sound device being implemented in web assembly and then playing through a browser. Pretty wild. And all these applications compile down to really tiny ROM files.
Chris, it looks like Chris had a question in chat. Are there games we can check out made with this programming language? So like on itch, for example.
Yeah. let's see, I'll go back to this main page. So here's the games list. I'll just go through them quick. There's a Japanese language learning application. This is on itch, as you can see. You can find most of these on Rec and Devine's page. I'll just paste the link in there. So that's the 100 Rabbits itch.io. So they got a few games on there. Not all of them are done in UXN, but every one they've made since they made UXN have been in UXN. And then here's the itch link for Donsol. And yeah, there's a Flappy Bird-like game. I haven't actually seen this one. Oh, they don't have pictures or anything. I assume it probably works. Here's Pong. I guess the full, so this is back in that tutorial I was showing you. There's Minesweeper, Snake. Yeah, the that itch link for 100 Rabbits has they have their virtual pet in there somewhere. And the virtual pet thing's called UFO. I don't see it on this list for some reason, but it works. And yeah, probably my favorite, and a lot of people's favorite, is Orca. I'll see if this will play, and you can see what it looks like when it's running. So you can see there's stuff moving around on the screen, and the way that everything is moving is driven by what's written there. And little beats and pulses go around and hit operators that cause it to emit MIDI signals. So you can have that routed to a like a digital audio workstation, or you could have it piped out to a physical MIDI device. Kind of depends on how you like to perform. Pretty wild though. Yeah, I love this stuff.